I'm ready to slash and burn.
No quarter. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And today I am so excited to have a couple members of the team behind Lucky, including Captain Mark Demers and the driver of Lucky, Matt Olson.
Howdy, thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. So it's funny that, you know, the team is called TKO Robotics, and there certainly have been some KOs this season, which is really exciting for Lucky. So I want to talk about that. And I feel like, you know, this season built off of the performance, you know, towards the end of last year. Like last year is when Lucky really started to show, you know, something, and you could tell that this season was probably going to be a really good season for you. But you have to be really excited about at this point being 3-0. You know, is that a surprise, or were you expecting that you could potentially have this kind of season?
I'll let Mark answer that one.
Sure.
I'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, we've remained confident with our machine for a long time, and we've been through this before. Some of the people that know the history know Ziggy from days past, and there were years where we were trying to get Ziggy tuned up, and there were always naysayers saying, oh, they would never be competitive with the likes of top machines like the Judge or Gladiator, right? We got that shade for a long time until we could prove that we were good enough and competitive. So, I mean, being the underdog is something I relish, actually, and you know, we've been working away. I think we work as hard or harder than most teams, certainly as hard as any team. And we've got some smart guys working on the team, and we're always working to improve and get better. Not necessarily better than the other teams, just better than we were before. And you know, as the field is getting harder and harder to compete in, I think we're hanging in there pretty good.
Absolutely. So then, you know, kind of going into those specific matches, obviously the first one was against Triton, and, you know, I think that's always an interesting situation to find yourself in, because Triton is a rookie bot, but Brad Handstad is not a rookie to combat robotics in any way. And that, you know, that comes off of the heels of, you know, Deep Six being its predecessor and being a very dangerous robot to fight. You know, were you concerned because, you know, that blade is vicious when it's working, and, you know, fortunately for you in that match, Triton didn't have you know, the match that they probably really wanted to have there, but, you know, great way to start with a win.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's nothing to say about it, but we were really respectful of that blade. We knew they would hit hard, probably the hardest hitting spinner this year, as hard as anybody. And we were aware that if they hit us in the right place, that things would come on. So we were respectful, I guess, confident that we could win, but not certain that we would, just like every other match. And I guess we went in there with the right attitude, and I think Matt put Lucky in the right positions to not take massive blows. We did take some hits and some damage, but it went the way we wanted it to that match. Yeah, Matt?
Yeah, and I think to add to Mark, you know, you'll see on Lucky, like you were talking about, from the 21 season to the 22 season, I guess it'd be now 23, but we shoot it the previous year. You know, kind of coming on and driving Lucky. And a lot of people saw where from maybe years past that it needed a little bit more of a driver behind him, because Lucky is a control bot at the end of the day. You need to be very precise when you hit the button, because it's all controlled by one person. So not only are we driving it, but we're also firing the weapon at the same time. And there's multiple buttons for different power levels of Lucky. The first one we have is jab. And then the second one we call haymaker. And then we've never used it in battle, but there's one called kablamo. And it's true. I've never used it because I already break the machine. Mark doesn't want me to break it on my own, you know, without getting hit by another bot, because it'll actually break itself with Kablamo. So, and then even with Haymaker, we don't do it that often because of the fact that it could hurt the machine if we, you know, don't come in contact with the bot. But you might see with Lucky this year on this season, and a lot of people are starting to notice we've got a lot of different configurations for Lucky. So a lot of times he come, you know, before you always know like the little wedgelets in the front and then the front face, and that's kind of like the normal look of Lucky. But I would say, you know, these last 2 years, Mark and the team has put in a huge amount of effort into doing different configs, you know, because we are an older bot, but we're also trying to give them a facelift to like go up against this new competition. And you were talking about Triton, and I've got a good friend, and Mark does as well, that was actually part of Team Lucky, which Andrew Burgraff, and he's on the team that was with Deep Six and Triton. So I was talking to him about that bot, and he goes, dude, it sounds scary. And when we saw it, like both Mark and Mark always tells me, he gives me the stats before, he's like, well, either we're going to get hit once and go home in a, you know, in a basket, or we've got a chance to win this. And he always tells me, he goes, 7 out of 10 we win that match, or 1 out of 10 we win that match. But he's like, you got 10%, Matt, good luck, you know. So and that's what he always, before every match, he's like, all right, you got about 40% to win this thing, with how he sees, because Mark has been in this obviously for 20 plus years, you know, of it, and he's seen everything underneath the sun, study these things. And I've been driving for 20 plus years, but not in BattleBots. So like, you'll see my first season, I did have some matches like against the Bolt winner or the Nut winner, you know, Tantrum, and I would say my inexperience lost Lucky that fight in the first one, because I did things that I wouldn't do now. I wasn't as ruthless as I need to be, and that's coming from my dynamic with RC car racing. It's we don't try and be ruthless, you know, we don't try and hit people. So it was different, but you know, every match, you know, Mark and I talk a lot about strategy and different stuff. So I have to re-gear my brain for, you know, just being much more cutthroat and also not hurting the bot as well. But Triton was a really good one. And then if you see it at the end where we call him, because we barely hit him and he went up like on his side and he sat there. And that's all that Lucky had. Like, he ended up getting a good hit on us, and it hit us in the temple. It hit us on the arm. So our arm actually, it like, because it's a 4-bar setup, so it got stuck. So we only had the little jab, and that was it. So it was one more move, and we would have been. But that's all we needed. We just needed that one move. So, but it definitely, Triton's powerful, and we were able to play the strategy with that big wedge, and you know, we went for it, and we had the right setup, so it worked great.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it couldn't have gone better, like more perfect, like you mentioned, with the you know, the placement and everything at the end. So yeah, and then speaking of, you know, because you were talking about older bots and like, you know, changing over the years, and the next opponent, Kraken, is a really good example of that, because Kraken has been around for such a long time. It is a very beloved bot, and then Matt Spurk made the decision, you know, to go with this different design, because, you know, the having a more active weapon, having that vertical spinner in the front. And I'm really curious, how different did you have to think about and approach that match versus how you would have maybe approached Kraken in the past, when it didn't have that vertical spinner?
Yeah, I know that Mark fought Kraken, the old version of Kraken, and I'm basically the newer version. So it's kind of funny to see the transition. Obviously, Matt is a legend within the community. They were actually pitted right across from us, so we had this little, you know, "Are you feeling lucky, punk?" You know, like right there with our new armor setup, because Mark had this cool armor setup, and I think I've seen things of like old, like against the Judge or something like that on Ziggy, where he had the rubber mounted top armor, and then it was all new. We had these cool fender flare setup, which we really like now on Lucky. I think that needs to be its new look, kind of the off-road look. And we know that they were, you know, a saw coming down, but they could go both ways with it. I don't think it's any sort of you know, secret that we're trying to figure out the vert game. I have personally never beat one yet at full power. We've come close, but so we're still figuring that out. But we knew for the saw portion of it, you know, having that shock rubber armor on there, and then kind of just watching what they've done in other matches. We were watching their drive. We knew that they might have been pretty weak on that. And then we're starting to take our time a lot more with power weapons. We're you know, waiting a little longer, seeing their moves and stuff like that, because we are slower too. We're running on brushed in that season, so everybody's on brushless now, and more power. So we're a bigger, slower bot. You know, it is an older bot, but we're upgrading it, and that was some stuff we were doing at Robogames here, and had a very good showing there. So, but yeah, how you just approach that is you just study. You know, we're able to see all the matches that previously, like as it's going through the season, so we knew what was going on with their bot. And then also just looking across the table, you kind of, you know, you walk by, you look over, you know, as you keep walking by, and you see what they're also doing. But we just took our time, and especially in that fight, I saw that their drive was a little bit down, so I waited to get in. Mark and I we have two-way headsets, so he's talking to me in my ear like, okay, you know, wait a little bit, and then we're talking, and definitely, like, when I hit him up on the shelf, you know, Mark was like, hey, watch out, he's going to try and come back down. And, you know, I'm laser focused on Lucky and seeing what's there. It's nice to have him in my ear, you know, to kind of give me that extra point of view that I might not see. And then we work on setup together and everything like that. So it's good to have both of, you know, the inputs on everything of what's going on. So it definitely led to being able to kind of dominate, you know, that match. We wish he was at full power on his drive, and you know, it might have been a little bit longer of a match, but I still believe it would have still went the same way.
Yeah, and Mark, I'm curious to get your take, you know, because like you had fought the past version of Kraken, so
Right.
you have a little bit more history there too.
Right. It's funny to distinguish because I always consider us as a team, right? But yeah, we have had several drivers, and Matt and I are very aware of which matches we've each driven, and that was one that I drove. It's a different machine for sure. I think the matchup with the old Kraken was favorable for us. The new one actually it's hard to game plan for because we had top armor on top, which is I think effective for any sort of hammer or even a hammer saw coming down. But their configuration is hard to plan for because they have the ability to go down, they have the ability to go up. And I was worried about them going up, and Matt said their game plan was to spin up as a vert, and that's what they did. We saw them spinning up in the test box, and it was like scary fast. And we game planned that match, and basically, you know, it's like, hey, if we get one hit from that thing, we're in serious trouble. So we've got to go through and win this match without taking a single hit. And if you saw Matt was showing, I think that was his best match that he's shown so far, showing some patience. I think you know, we beat Mammoth like last year, and that was all aggression, you know, full forward, full aggression. And I think that sort of approach might have cost us if we would have gone that way against Kraken. But Matt had we talked through game plan. Matt had patience. He went in at the start, and we knew that our agility was better than theirs. And when they were turning to sort of angle their weapon towards us, that spinner, Matt was able to regroup, get out of there, and just keep the distance, and then pick the shots. We really wanted to control the tempo and really dictate the engagements, and we were able to do that. They had and Matt Spurk's going to figure this out, but they had real drive issues. It's going to be better next year. It's going to be really hard to contend against them. We did have a drive advantage. They were limping a little bit, so we took advantage of that. Didn't want to put a lot of risk on the game plan, and that was a fun match to watch. And for me, it was fun to watch Matt Olson, our driving improvement and the sort of the care to not only deliver the throws, but avoid taking damage, right? So that was, I think, was like I said, my opinion, Matt's best scrimmage match so far.
Yeah, it was really great. So 2-0. Then the latest match that has aired was the one versus Shreddit Bro, which, I have to say, I mean, like, I personally think, Evan is such a talented builder, and obviously Shreddit Bro has gone through some growing pains as a new bot in BattleBots this season. You were able to take advantage of that in the match, obviously, and end up with a KO about a minute in. What was your approach to that? Because I mean, obviously, like I said, Evan's been around with other bots. He had Pain Train, really, really talented with building bots at Norwalk and things like that. So, kind of, what was your strategy kind of going into that?
Yeah, I know he's had a lot of success in the lower weight classes, and we were looking at their bot, and also, we saw them full tear down, and we didn't know that they had actually 2 Shreddit Bros, and there was another one that was like completely, like, wires were out of it. We didn't know that they were actually going to make the match, and then we saw the other Shreddit Bro was sitting in the battery tent and everything ready. So we're like, oh, these guys are ready. So we had watched their matches, and again, it's it reminded me and gave me flashbacks of our Copperhead fight. He's got the similar type of weapon with the vert drum, and obviously that's like I'm sure you've heard it before, the meta for BattleBots right now is verts. I think I was counting today, I want to say there was 29 or 30 verts, the teams of BattleBots of the 50 teams. So, that's a good 70% or whatever it is. So we have to go up against that, and that's what we prepare for. So you'll see that big snout that's on the front of Lucky. And that was one of our new things. Mark had that out, and he was making the face, it was like a Frankenstein face that we had on there. He was all cut up and jagged. Honestly, it was terrible looking. I did not like it, but it ended up working out as far as the face of it. And he had this full snout because we're trying to figure out the fork game for these things. It actually worked out pretty good. I would have liked to see it with them with their weapon up at power. We were able to take advantage of it and just go in kind of slow. Mark said, hey, just kind of feed it into their weapon. Because it's really hard to get around bots and anything like that. So we're going to have to go up against it. But how fast we go up against it, we can usually control, like Mark said, the tempo. And ended up just getting them. And then we were able to hit them a couple times and then toastered them into the screws. So it just went, and they kind of, I'm sure they'll have a plan for that, make it maybe a little wider or something. It just slipped down, like a cassette in a cassette player there. We were just, oh man, we didn't think that wasn't the initial plan. It just kind of happened how it did, with them slipping like a piece of toast inside of the screws there. So that was pretty funny. I think people got a kick out of that one. But we hope that those guys, I think later in the season they're going to figure out, their drive and their power and everything like that. They can be definitely a formidable bot, and looking forward to a rematch someday with them, and with them at full power. But so far we're 3-0, and we got Cobalt up next, so that's going to be a crazy one for sure.
Yes. Mark, any thoughts on the Shreddit Bro match that Matt didn't talk about?
Yeah. So, there's one thing we didn't mention there is, they were showing drive issue as well, and their weapon was spinning up relatively slowly. But I never like to take it for granted that they're going to be limping in. We did that a little bit last year. Matt will remember this with Switchback, where Switchback had a little bit of a drive issue early on. And by the time we faced them, they were actually driving pretty well. And I think we got a little surprised and maybe a little I don't want to say sloppy, maybe that's the right word, but we didn't take it seriously enough. And we got surprised. And this time going in, we were assuming that they're going to figure out the driving, be driving at full speed, figured that they're going to be spinning at full speed and acted accordingly. The match was effective, very precise, very efficient. And Matt did this thing I call the drive-by, where your opponent's here and you look like you're going to drive past them and they're coming at your side and then turn at the last second. Matt did a perfect job of timing that, got that snout right under them. And they weren't spinning at full speed, but Matt's precision on that move was exactly what we talked about and exactly what he did. And we put the pointy AR nose right in the middle of the spinner. If it was spinning at full speed, I think it would have done the job too. They weren't spinning at full speed, so it was a little bit easier. And then, we just went to work and we picked the shots, and we didn't waste a lot of shots. We just got them against the side and flipped them over and got the job done very efficiently. Nothing showy, nothing flashy, but put them where the match would be over quick.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, heck, Shreddit Bro got these awesome toaster t-shirts out of the match that they're selling now. So, I guess it worked out in that sense as well. But yeah, so the next fight that you have up is against Cobalt, which I would say I feel comfortable saying that is the scariest match for the season, because we've seen what Cobalt can do, so it's always something that you have to be extra prepared for, because one hit can take you out. Without going into anything that actually happened in the match, what were your thoughts and what did you do to really get prepared for that fight?
Yeah, I think
Go for it,
like
Mark.
any match. Do you want to start, Matt? You can go ahead.
That's all you, buddy.
All right, sure. So I mean, like any match, I'm 100% confident we can beat anybody, and I'm 100% confident we can lose to anybody. So I mean that's a starting position. With guys like Cobalt, the idea is don't take a hit. We did it with Kraken, and that's the game plan. Matt's working on his driving. I mean, his precision at the controls is amazing, and he's getting the speed with which he's getting better is also amazing to me. He's still new to the game, so there's a lot to impart in terms of experience. But the more you drive, the more you get out of watching other people drive and game plans and things. And I think our matchup with Cobalt is the same as any vertical spinner, I think, going forward, or them or anyone else. It's like, hey, you don't want to get hit by the nasty part, so let's drive in a way that we don't, right? So we want to get under them, we want to control the tempo. And Matt's shown a few times, even against Copperhead, we got absolutely obliterated by Copperhead. I don't think anyone's taken more hits than we did in that match against Copper. It must have been 30, 40, 50 hits. And we kept running. But there was a period of time in that match where Matt showed his drive and he just, started driving around the box and Copperhead couldn't touch us. And I think that's new to the game. And I think going forward, that's stuff we're going to work on more. But at some point in the future, as we get the drivetrain dialed in for Lucky, I think Matt's driving is really going to be a distinguishing mark for us. Anyways, so Cobalt itself, I mean, you saw my comments at the end of the show last time. That kind of match can go one of two ways. Either we get the hits we want and we get in, make the moves, and put them on their back, or we take massive damage. We saw the match against Duck a few years ago, and nobody is tougher than Duck. And they ended up winning, but man, that was a sight to be seen when Duck went against Cobalt. So absolutely a lot of respect for those guys. John's a good friend of mine. Dave Molds is driving this year. But that's a fun matchup, exciting matchup, and I'm looking forward to how the crowd reacts when we go up against Cobalt.
Yeah, 100%. The Cobalt, like, even in the pits when guys were asking us, because I think this is the first time that even everybody knows, you guys know all of our matchups for the first 4. I think this is something that they changed. So everybody was getting their 4 matchups, and, you know, Mark's looking at it, I'm looking at it, and I don't know as many bots per se as Mark does. And, you know, we were looking at, we knew some new bots were on there. And then every time I mention Cobalt to anybody else, they're like, oh, good luck, you know, we'll see. And I was like, oh man. So we're looking over there, and that, you know, it's like a veteran bot that is feared by everybody. So going into that one, you know, it's definitely, you can feel it. And we went into it knowing, okay, we're like, win, lose, or draw, we're pretty much in the top 32, which is our goal. I think that we made it last year, so we want to make it this year. And if you're 3-0, when they tell, basically, if they tell you, if you win 3 matches, it's like an automatic in for this season. And so we knew we were in, but we also want to make a good showing with Cobalt. And it's exciting. The match is definitely exciting, and it's going to be a wow factor. No spoilers, but it's definitely going to be a wow factor. But they are 100% a very tough bot, and looking forward to you guys being able to see it.
Yes, absolutely. I did not see that one, because I was there for the what I like to call the really exciting stuff that is yet to come with the tournament. So I don't know anything about any of these fight night matches. But yeah, so, you know, moving on from that, we just are kind of off of the heels of Robogames, which is back for the first time in a long time. And I know there was a lot of buzz and excitement for that, and I was really excited to see everybody kind of preparing and bringing both bots that we know, and some bringing bots that we weren't as familiar with, or, you know, newer ones. You know, I kind of want to hear from both of you how that experience was, because I think it was something so many people were very excited about.
Yeah, so, well, it was, I'll lead into it. It's my first experience at Robogames. I'm sure Mark has a ton to talk about, because I believe his super heavyweight Ziggy won a lot back in the early 2000s. And it was my first experience. I think I did it on a whim. My girlfriend, Megan, she's fallen in love with BattleBots, by the way. Her first time was this last season. I snuck her in. You know, I told Mark I was bringing her, but she helped out a lot, actually, and she's fallen in love with it. You know, she shows her 4th graders. She's a teacher. She shows her 4th graders that, then they're like, lucky, so they're able to see it. So they absolutely love it. And, you know, for the weekend, I travel a lot for my normal work. And we had just come off the heels of another event. And I had talked to Mark kind of on a whim and said, hey, I think Megan and I are going to come up for 2 days. You know, let's see how it is. And Mark's like, you know, okay, cool. You know, I think we're both going to share the duties of driving, because we got some new drive train stuff that we got going on. So he wanted to feel it as well, because he's been obviously piloting for a long time. But then there's also the competition part of it too. So we also want to make a good showing there, especially with maybe some of the more bots that guys have been driving and whatnot. So we went up there, and it was super fun. They were putting together the battle box. And I would say it's, you know, definitely not as crazy as the one that you have behind you for BattleBots, because it's such a much bigger production. But they got some seed money. They were able to improve their floor and their sides, new legs, and whatnot, all new steel for the floor. And then it's a double elimination format. So you have 2 brackets. So once, it's not like in BattleBots where you've got qualifying and then you're put in the brackets and then it's basically single elimination. It's a double elimination format. So you sign up and then you basically get 2 chances. You're in the winner's bracket and you keep moving on in the winner's bracket. And then if you lose, you go to the losers bracket. If you lose again, you're automatically eliminated. And we had some good battles there. I think we went 5-2 at the end of the day, and so we had a lot of good matches. We ended up in 4th place overall, just 1 step off the podium, and then the 2 that we lost to were actually the 2 in the finals. So Lucky had a really good showing, or Ziggy Jr. Ziggy Jr. was the bot. And, you know, a lot of fans that were there, which was super cool. We tested out our new drivetrain system and saw some really good things with it, and also saw some stuff that we're going to have a meeting on to help improve upon that, and some new front end setup. Is the 2 that we lost against were vertical spinners. So we still are needing to work on that. But yeah, Mark will lead you through more and kind of obviously the history that's there, because Robogames has been around just, I would say, as long as BattleBots, I believe.
Almost, yeah. It was our place to play after BattleBots went off the air, and as Matt said, with Ziggy, we became pretty predominant there at Robogames. I think 2006 to 2010, we won gold every year. And I think in that streak, I don't think we lost a match at Robogames. So there's people that have been around since then that look at Lucky and say, hey, we believe you can do more, and we believe we can do more. One thing that Matt and I share is, as much as we brush it off and we get back on our feet, we both really hate to lose. So either we're winning or we're learning. That's really the attitude with the team. Going to this Robogames, I'll say, I wasn't really sure who was going to show up for crew. We had people whose plans had changed, and it was looking a little daunting because it was a small crew. We had almost no tools shipping out across the country, and I had resolved ahead of time, if we show up and we have a couple of matches and we get to test these drive motors and learn a little bit about that, that's a success in my opinion. And we did, I'd say, quite well. We won all of the control bot matches. Gary Jin, Gary Jin is the king of Robogames, and sorry, Gary, but we were able to beat him definitively. And Original Sin doesn't break, and somehow we tossed him enough times that he stopped running. So that was maybe a little lucky on our side, but it was a good tournament for us. We learned a lot. I think Sunday, Matt, we had 4 matches on Sunday with a really small crew. We had barely any tools. We didn't have the right parts for Phil and Jim Ye from Raising Scotsman. Force's dad. He got us a fill port so we could fill up with air.
No, it was hexadecimator. But
the fill port actually we got from Jim. The fill station we got from Hexadecimator. We borrowed chain from Gary Jin, and we borrowed chain from Kevin or Iman from Big Pickle, and we had almost no tools. The Gigabyte guys were helping us charge our batteries. Like, it was just awesome, and it's like that at BattleBots too, but it's even more wholesome at Robogames. And we couldn't have done it without all this help. But we had 4 matches on Sunday with a skeleton crew, and just to get through the matches was pretty hard. So it was a really good test, I think. The motors were good. The motors have a lot more in them. We can run higher voltage and get more out of them. But I kind of like when we were talking about Kraken earlier, like Kraken went from brush to brushless, and things got worse, right? They won't be worse for long. But I was fully expecting that things were going to get worse before they got better, and the better should be better. But I was fully expecting that this event we would be learning the gremlins of these motors, and everything that I saw with these were better. Our drive was better. It was a little bit sluggish at times that I could feel, but watching the matches, it wasn't obvious. We looked like we're hanging in there with the best driving machines. I think Calvin Eba is. I think he's actually the best driver in the sport right now. JMO, I think he and JMO are 1-2. Put them in whatever order you want. And then there's a bunch of specialists. I think Jake is the best flipper driver. Daniel Freitas, like you said, for Verts. Even Ray doesn't get enough credit for how he drives Tombstone, but those are sort of specialties. But Calvin, I think, has very high versatility, and I was thrilled to see. We got in there with Catter, and we ended up losing drive pretty early on. But while we had drive, I think we had them on the ropes, and Matt was there driving with them. We didn't look at a play. In fact, I think we really had them on their heels until they got that hit, and one hit, and we had a component go loose on our speed controller. But up till that point, I thought it was all us. So I mean, it was a great experience. I think a good experience for Matt. Got to drive against Matt Vasquez, one of the best drivers in the sport as well. We were able to win that. We fought him twice actually. We won the first time, but I won't say it out loud, but I think we lost. The judges were nice. It was very close.
It was close. It was
close.
very, very close. And
yeah,
but I had also had that.
Yeah, but the second time we faced them was later in the tournament, and we were able to get a knockout in that win. So if there was question on the first match, which was close, I think the second match answered it. And just that driving experience for our Matt is just awesome, right? You don't get a lot of stick time against Calvin or Matt, and like I said, they're definitely top 5 drivers in the game, and I think we were able to hang in there with them with our drive and with our new improved drivetrain. It's running pretty well, and we have a lot more. I think we have about double the power when we move up in battery voltage. So I think things are looking up and getting better as we look forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I wanted to touch on real quick, just because I'm curious to get your opinion on that, because I don't know, Matt, if you've ever been, but I know, Mark, you had gone to Norwalk to check out some of the NHRL action, and there's definitely a lot of talk potentially of Norwalk doing heavies at some point. There's talk about them expanding to different events nationally, like a lot of things. What did you think in your experience, like seeing things there, and how much that could potentially grow the sport and give more opportunities for like big events across the country?
Yeah, I mean, I love Norwalk. I love Robogames. I love BattleBots. I love them all. They all serve a different purpose, and they all have a great place. Norwalk was a great environment, a lot of fun, a lot of young people. The barrier to entry in these smaller classes is low, and we were one of the few teams from BattleBots that was there. There were a handful of us, but most of them were competing. Like JMO was there competing, and Aaron Hill, and a bunch of the teams were. But we weren't competing, so I was hanging out with my kids, and we were just in with the audience. And people were like, "Hey, is that the guy from Lucky?" It's like, and so my kids had people asking for their autograph and stuff like that. So that was fun. But I mean, in terms of getting people into the sport, getting from zero to you're on BattleBots is really hard. And we kind of grew with the sport. But even from when we started in 2016 at BattleBots, well, we were at BattleBots Season 5 way longer. But from 2015 till now, the caliber has gone way up, and it's way harder than it was. And I just can't imagine starting from nothing and trying to get it into that level. And these smaller events are awesome. People are having fun. I mean, JMO's there. JMO won 2 weight classes. Calvin wins there too. And it really shows how good they are. And they have very high versatility in all of the categories. They're really good. And I think we have to get there and not only go and experience it for the fun, but we need to get out there and drive, get more stick time. One of the things is we don't run verts. The vertical spinners all have that gyro effect, and we observe that, but we've never driven a vert, to be honest. And I think the only way to really intrinsically understand how the dynamics work is to drive one. So we'll be building more machines in these other categories and driving them and learning. I mean, our job is to learn and get to be better at driving, and the way you learn, like when you have a machine, you go into a match. Every time we do, like I look at, if I was them, how would I beat me, right? And when you put that mindset into a vert, if we're running a vert, we'll be putting that like, hey, if they want to neutralize us, here's how we do it. And it's kind of a negotiation, with your opponent. So we're planning to do that, run more machines, run more competitions, drive more. I'd like to drive me versus Matt. I'm an old guy with slow reflexes, but I know the game. Matt's a young guy with awesome reflexes, and his precise control of the machine. And then putting those two things together, where we have the experience and the precision, I think that's a winning combination if we can merge the two, and we're starting to do that now, I think, and we've got a lot of improvement ahead of us, but I think we're making improvements pretty quick. Matt's improvement's pretty remarkable in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, obviously lots of exciting things to come, being 3-0, like you said, it seems pretty certain that Lucky will be in the tournament. Obviously we can't confirm or deny, but it seems likely. So that's exciting, and we'll obviously see how the rest of the season plays out for Lucky. One thing that I want to make sure that I have you do, because I've been doing that with all the teams, please take time and plug your sponsors real quick, because I think that that's important to make sure that they get that love for, supporting the team and all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So we've had a sponsor for a number of years, Virtucom. They're not with us this year, but they were with us for a number of years, so I wanted to mention them first. But we have Design First as a design and engineering services company. They're sort of not only a sponsor but part of the team. Their VP of engineering is our design lead, but Design First is a local company. Lorenz Conveyance does pneumatics and conveyance products. It's actually really relevant because they're operating air pressure to move things around, and they use things like abrasion resistant steel. It's pretty cool. So that marriage has been really good. And we have a new sponsor this year called Dymac, and they were instrumental. We had some last minute welding to do, and they really came through for us in the last 2 weeks before the competition. It's been really good.
Awesome. Yeah. And then, obviously the next couple of months we'll be wrapping up World Championship 7. Before you know it, it will be time for World Championship 8, which could happen this year, could happen next year. Who knows? I think the fans will probably find out when the builders do, but hopefully we will see Lucky back again if asked to World Championship 8. Is that the plan at this point?
Yeah, that's absolutely the plan. World Championship 8, we don't know the schedule. I think Lucky's been a robot that's been somewhat on the bubble. We're always in the mix, I think, and I was always worried that we'd be not selected because we've done okay, but not to the caliber that I'd like to see. I think this year so far we're showing. I mean, we're 3-0. A few fans have pointed out that we have the best record of any flipper out there, and I think we're earning a position going forward. So our confidence that we get in for next year is very high. You don't know what happens next either, coming down with the tournament ahead of us. But it's definitely been a lot of fun, good seasons with recent years, and only getting better and getting better further going forward. So yeah, we're excited. I mean, I'll say, as a team, we're working to learn all the time. And what compared to say Hydra's obviously a rival. They're another flipper. They're an awesome flipper. I love Jake. I always look for a chance to throw a dig at him if I can. But I love his drive. He's a really good driver. Machine's really good. But what we're trying to do to differentiate is improve our versatility. I actually think Hydra and Jake have limited versatility. They always do the same thing. They do it very well. And at some point, I think people are going to stop just driving up the front of it and learn that if you don't drive up the front, then you can win. So I think they're really good at winning, but I don't think they're that hard to beat. And we're looking forward to a matchup with them, hopefully in the near future.
Hey, I'd love to see it. And
talking to you, Jake. Talking to you, man.
I'll have to tag him, and he can't resist a challenge.
No, I know. So... I love those guys. I love
yes, absolutely. Well, that's exciting. I think we need more flippers, man. Like I really do. I mean, most of my favorite robots are verts. We're going to pretend that that's not a thing, but you know, like I really, I think that I love the diversity in BattleBots. I love to see more, you know, robots that, you know, it doesn't look like the match that you saw the last time. You know, I think that that's always interesting. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the future looks like for Lucky. Seems very exciting from what we've seen so far this season. And yeah, just, you know, excited for more things to come, obviously.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting too. We were at Robogames. When you see the matches on television, I think people don't get a sense of the scale at all, right? So when things are flipping, you don't really realize what's going on because people think they're these small machines. And we're at Robogames, and you see a 250-pound machine go flying through the air, and they hit the Lexan, and the whole arena shakes. People get a lot more sense of the magnitude of the power behind that, and we put on a good show. I mean, it was, you know, we were pleased with our matches and our outcome. Lost a couple, which was a disappointment, but like we put on a good show, and there's fans that like our machine that didn't know us before, and that's what it's about. We had a lot of people come out. You know, we entertained and we connected with the fans, and we had a really. I was there with my kids. Everybody had a good time. It was really a fun event. Really, really good. And like, it's all the people that we know. I mean, we're all good friends behind the scenes, right? People don't realize how friendly we are as much as we're rivals. One interesting thing is Matt's our driver now, but we had Gary Jin has been a driver for us in the past, if you recall, and so was Curtis, right? And so in our challenges at Robo Games, I was able to match up. I drove against Crash and Burn and Curtis, and we were able to win that match. I think Curtis is a better driver than me, but I did okay, and we had a better machine that day. I think we won that, and then Matt went in and beat Gary, and this is kind of funny. And Matt doesn't know that I did this on purpose, but I handicapped him at the start of the match. And he's like, hey, if we're going to get against Gary, we have to have a really sharp front end because he's really sharp. I'm like, yeah, we're not going to get under the front. You have to go around and get to the side. He's like, no, go sharpen those wedgelets. I'm like, okay, I'll go do it. And so I sharpened them. I spent an hour sharpening them. And we put it on the floor at the start of the match, and it was about an inch off the ground. He's like, what did you do? And I'm like, well, you got to get aside. I told you that, right? So we had a good laugh about it. And I really, Matt was like, I don't know how I win with what you just did for my front end there. Thanks, Mark. And so, you know, during the first minute of the match, Gary was absolutely kicking our ass. And over the next 2 minutes, Matt was able to figure out how to beat him. And once we started avoiding that front end of Gary's, we were able to turn the match around. But it was a really funny thing. If you watch the video from on the Twitch feed, like Matt and I are actually looking at it, laughing, going, how did we do this? Where the front end is so sharp, but it's like an inch off the ground. Like, how do we win? This is terrible. And we ended up, we got lucky and we got it. What do you think, Matt? That was an accident, by the way. Did I say it was on purpose? I totally did it by accident.
Yeah. No,
it was an accident. I swear.
So we went, and you'll notice the if you do watch Robo Games, you go through it. But basically, when we lost our match against Mad Catter, which is called Bad Kitty or something at the time, they messed up our front end, which had Cataclysm, which had our little front forklet things on the front. Well, anyways, so you have to take off that whole front nose piece, and then we put on the wedgelets, and ended up where it takes some time to do that. So Mark is like the master at grinding the front end, and he matches it, puts it on a table, looks at it's good. This will scrape paint off of anything. And I did it one time at BattleBots in 2021, and I thought I did a good job. He looks at it, he's like, this is, excuse my language, this is shit, Matt. So he goes back and he does it on his own.
Did I say it was shit?
And then he brought it back, and it was much better than what I did. I was like, oh, okay, until you have done it, with the wedge game. Well, he decided to give me a ham sandwich for how much space there was in between the floor and the wedge. Like, it was this much. It was like that, and one was sitting up top. So, in Mark's all wisdom, he goes, go and hit the wall and see if they go down. I'm like, oh my God. He's like, well, hit it again. So I rammed Lucky into the wall before the match to see if the forks will go down. And I'm like, this is, practical engineering right here. Let's just smash it enough, to see if we can get the front end to go down. So
and it didn't work.
Yeah, basically it didn't work. Like, one was sitting like this, one was sitting like this, you know, and like that was my front end game for Lucky. And this like we lose again, we're out. Like that's it. We're done with Robo games. So and then I'm going up against Gary Jin, and he'll drive around till he has half a wheel left, you know, and he'll swing around half his bot to beat you. So I was like, oh man. So and he had these real nice front, you know, wedgelets, basically what Mark would do for me, but didn't do it for me. And these real sharp front wedgelets on his. And man, I couldn't do anything. And Gary's faster than us too. He came right underneath, and then Lucky's just riding on the top of him like this, and I'm getting tossed all over the place, and I couldn't do anything. And luckily I was able to, you know, back up and get to his side a little bit. And then if I'm able to get a bot flipped one time, I can keep up, you know, almost like flipping pancakes. You know, you just like a hacky sack. You just keep going and you just keep them up in the air, hacky sack them. So I'm able to usually do that, but I need to get one flip in. So I was able to do that with Gary, and I think I knocked out a power plug on his motor or something like that, and he lost drive, and we were able to win it. You know, Mark didn't help at all. Zero help from Mark in that
Negative
one.
help.
Negative help.
Negative help.
Yeah,
he
told me, he goes,
so
well, now you
bad.
got a handicap, Matt. Good luck.
Yeah.
And I was like, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
I don't need a
Who are you working
handicap
for?
against Gary Jin.
Gary Jin or me? Are you helping out Gary Jin right now? Where's the loyalty? Is where, you know, so we both got a good laugh at it. But
yeah,
you know, it was that match right there that, you know, we went on for a few more matches. We wouldn't have been able to, you know, but you know, it was a funny moment. We were able to get through it, and so it was a lot of fun. We fixed it after that. We were able to go against
Matt
who was it after that? Yeah, Matt Vasquez with Whiplash, or Whomper as they call it. He didn't have his center vert on there, so it was all control box stuff. We ended up breaking 2 of his gearboxes, so he was free spinning. But that was a really close match. And then we went up against Hexadecimator, so it was the flipper match. Thanks to those guys, we were able to use their air and different stuff. You know, from that first match there, and we beat Hexy. And then we went on and faced Manta, which I don't believe they didn't get into BattleBots this season. I imagine they're going to get in this next season. They ended up winning it all. And they were like a 4-wheel version of Copperhead with a thinner drum. And the power, I don't think they were limited on power for their tip speed. It was frightening how much. And we were just we had one ability to get a shot, but I think that our drivetrain locked up a little bit. We had some chain issues on possibly another side, so we're going to get back and look at that. But that sent us out of the tournament. But that was one before we would face White Rabbit, which was Malice and Bunny. So we think we could have possibly been into the finals, but we just didn't end up making it. We need a yeah, as you said, your favorite bots are the verts. We need a plan against those things. They're very good.
Yeah,
they're hardest challenge, and that's 70% of the field now. And you know, and it's one of those things where we need to figure it out because it is the meta. But we need to be faster. I think that's what Mark is working on right now. For Lucky, because if we can get faster, we can dodge more, we can play it, you know, a little bit safer, wait for those right opportunities, and strike when we see those opportunities. Because right now Lucky is just not fast. Everybody knows that. So we're working on that. We're working on their shortcomings. And I think, like Mark said, it can beat any bot that's out there. We just need the right strategy and the right setup to do it. And then a little bit of luck at the end of the day.
Hey, exactly. No, I thought it was funny though, because you know, you're telling the story with the match against Scary Jin, and I am like, well, there you go, folks. That is an exact explanation of why Matt Olson is one of the best drivers in BattleBots. So...
It was pretty funny. Like it was so bad what I did to the machine. You couldn't do anything but laugh because it was so, like, it wasn't even close to a ground game. It was terrible, and we were laughing. And Matt's like, hey, Mark, how am I going to win with that bullshit, right? I'm like, hey, Matt, I thought you were a good driver. Come on, show me how you can drive, right? And put it on.
He's like, good luck, and I'm like,
out drive
oh my
Gary, man. That's all
god,
you got to do. Just
out drive him, and I just look
That's
over
all.
at him, and we're slower than Gary. Like we're much slower. His wedge game is much on par. You know, it's like I didn't even have wedges on the front. Mark would have done me a favor if he just took them off and gave me the mounts that were underneath. It was about the same amount of help that those were. But no, it was one of those things where it was a laughing moment because we couldn't do anything else. And the only reason we missed it is we always set our bot on we set it on like a mover for it it's a cart, and we ended up, it's always sitting on there, so we're working on it all the time. So the only time that it goes from that to the ground is when it goes into the box. So we put on the new front end setup and all new, you know, front mounts that had just been machined and everything. Well, the machining was not correct, or something was off. You're either fixing you're fixing BattleBots with duct tape, zip ties, and grinding, you know, and it needed the grinding, and we didn't do that. So one thing to add to the list that we're gonna make sure, like, hey, when this thing goes in the box, does it sit flat? You know, so that will be on Mark's checklist from now on with front end game.
Oh, we had it fixed by the next match. That was good. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was good by the next match.
Yeah,
I did. I was hitting seams on the floor, you know.
It's important, you know, to have those teachable moments and then be able to turn around and correct them. So yeah, no, that's great. I love stories like that so much because it's just things that, you know, the fans don't necessarily know about or get to hear about. So that's tremendous. But yeah, so, you know, so excited for, you know, to see more from Lucky, because I do absolutely think that this is a flipper bot that has the potential to win a giant nut. So, you know, we'll see what happens. But you know, for everybody that's watching the show, I think as of this moment right now, we have 422 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do. I would love to get to 500 by the end of the month. That would be so awesome, so that we can keep growing this and, you know, having this wonderful combat robotics community that we do. So yeah, just everyone that watches and supports, thank you. Keep watching the show. Thank you to Mark and Matt for being on the show, and we will talk to everybody on the next episode.
Thank you so much.